Italian police have arrested a man suspected of shooting at migrants while driving around the city of Macerata, wounding several people. Local media say the attack may be racially motivated, just days after a Nigerian migrant was arrested in connection with the gruesome killing of a young Italian woman.
Addiction is a destructive and insidious condition that can devastate not only an individual's life, but also deeply affect everyone around them. Like any disease, it demands prompt intervention from a qualified professional before it becomes too late. The case of 18-year-old Pamela Mastropietro, which took place in Italy in 2018, stunned the nation with its unthinkable brutality. It nearly sparked widespread unrest, including targeted violence against migrants. Several innocent people were attacked solely because of their ethnicity, and only by chance were further tragedies prevented. Pamela was born on August 23, 1999, in Rome, Italy, the only child of Alessandra Verni and Stefano Mastropietro. She was raised in a comfortable, educated household. Her parents ran a successful business and did everything they could to provide their cherished daughter with the best possible life. Despite their demanding schedules limiting the time they spent with her, certain unusual aspects of Pamela's behavior began to emerge early on. She was intensely shy, withdrawn, and avoided social interaction. Her parents did not view these traits as worrisome, believing she would outgrow them once she began school and formed relationships with children her own age. However, as Pamela got older, these difficulties became more evident. Throughout her school years, she struggled deeply with socialization and found it hard to make friends. Teachers described her as intelligent and capable, but lacking confidence. She suffered from intense anxiety, sleep problems, and multiple fears, prompting her parents to consult a specialist. She was eventually diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Pamela often placed her trust in the wrong people, struggled to recognize danger around her, and appeared to have little sense of self-preservation. As she grew older, her mental health difficulties became more and more evident. At the age of 11, her family went through a serious crisis with Alessandra and Stefano close to divorce. The upheaval had a profound impact on Pamela and led to a diagnosis of depression. Although her parents eventually reconciled and saved their marriage, Pamela's condition did not improve. 2 years later, she was also diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Yet, she continued attending regular school despite ongoing social difficulties in order to keep up with her studies. Pamela depended heavily on prescribed medication, which her mother carefully supervised. Alessandra clung to the hope that her daughter might eventually outgrow her mental health struggles. But Pamela's academic performance steadily declined, and her behavior grew increasingly erratic and unpredictable. She developed into a striking young woman with a model-like figure and captivating features. By her teenage years, she began drawing attention from young men, yet had no idea how to manage their interest. Her trusting and naive nature remained, leaving her vulnerable to manipulation and dubious invitations. This eventually led her into a dangerous social circle. Pamela's lack of confidence and suggestibility made her inclined toward experimentation. She was introduced to alcohol and later to illicit substances at a young age. Her ongoing mental health issues often impaired her judgment, making her especially vulnerable in her relationships. Her psychiatrist later testified in court that Pamela was often unable to fully comprehend her actions or give informed consent, leaving her vulnerable to exploitation while under the influence of drugs or alcohol. During these periods, Pamela felt more confident, carefree, and happy. But the brief sense of relief soon developed into a serious dependency. At just 15, she was admitted to a private rehabilitation facility where her parents hoped she could overcome her escalating addiction. The treatment initially proved effective, and a few months later she returned to school, appearing free from her former dependencies. She managed to sustain this progress for more than a year, until at 17, she met a 20-year-old Romanian man named Claudio. He quickly gained her trust, and they began a relationship. Under his influence, Pamela relapsed into substance use, dropped out of her studies, and started running away from home. Her dependencies not only returned, but escalated dramatically. Claudio eventually persuaded her to take part in dangerous activities, including exploiting her own body to finance their increasing substance use. When the Mastropietros became aware of Pamela's situation, they alerted the police. Claudio attempted to flee, but was quickly found and arrested. He was later sentenced to 4 years in prison for encouraging a minor to consume alcohol and powerful substances, as well as for coercing her into illegal activities. In mid-October 2017, Pamela's parents decided to enroll her in another rehabilitation clinic. This time, they chose to move her completely away from Rome, hoping to cut her off from the people and environments that had fueled her addiction. To do so, Alessandro and Stefano selected a treatment center in the small town of Macerata. The program was extremely expensive, but her parents were willing to pay any cost. Determined to give Pamela every possible chance at recovery, the treatment plan was designed to last 3 months and included individual and group therapy with psychologists, along with care from addiction specialists. After completing the program, Pamela was expected to return to a stable, substance-free life. The Mastropietros believed the clinic's high cost would guarantee constant supervision and protect their daughter from any access to harmful substances. However, the clinic's staff and security failed to uphold their responsibilities. Patients were frequently able to leave the premises without restriction, break curfews, obtain prohibited substances, and engage in risky behavior. At first, Pamela appeared to be improving and remained at the clinic for about 2 months. She said she felt much better, as the support and sense of community among others facing similar struggles gave her renewed hope. However, that same community, combined with a lack of proper supervision, ultimately worked against her. By early January 2018, as her rehabilitation program was nearing completion, Pamela began leaving the clinic to obtain and use substances again without any intervention from the staff. Alarmingly, her treating physician failed to recognize the relapse, setting the stage for a tragic chain of events. On January 29, 2018, Pamela's parents received a call from the rehabilitation center, informing them that their daughter was missing and had allegedly escaped the facility. A closer look, however, revealed a very different reality. An inspection of her room and security camera footage showed that Pamela had calmly packed her belongings into a suitcase and walked out through the main entrance. No one at the clinic stopped her or even asked where she was going. Fellow patients later disclosed that Pamela had recently begun using substances more frequently, buying them from dealers outside the facility. She had also talked about wanting to leave what she considered ineffective treatment and return to Rome. That was likely her intended destination when she left the clinic, but she never boarded a train, did not return home, and was not seen or heard from by anyone she knew afterward. Naturally, Alessandra and Stefano were devastated and determined to not let their daughter's disappearance remain unresolved. They filed a missing persons report with the police and sought help from the media. The couple appeared on a local television station, appealing to the public for any information that might lead to Pamela's whereabouts. They also offered a substantial reward for any credible information. But for the first 2 days, no significant updates surfaced. On January 31st, a distressed man contacted the police, reporting that 2 suspicious suitcases giving off a foul odor had been dumped in a ditch near his home. Concerned they might contain something dangerous, he had not touched or opened them. The man lived in a suburban area of Macerata, just a few miles from the rehabilitation center where Pamela had disappeared days earlier. Law enforcement, accompanied by bomb disposal experts, arrived at the scene, cordoned off the area, and carefully examined the suitcases to ensure they contained no explosives. Once deemed safe, the suitcases were opened, revealing a discovery that shocked even experienced investigators. The dismembered remains of a young woman had been packed inside, soaked in a corrosive chemical solution. Police immediately suspected the remains were Pamela's, but definitive confirmation required further testing. They showed the suitcases to her parents, who identified one as belonging to their daughter. Tragically, due to the severe damage and disfigurement, Pamela's body could only be officially identified through DNA testing, and determining the cause of death proved difficult. To make matters worse, the perpetrator had soaked the body parts in a bleach-like chemical, likely to destroy any trace of DNA. This treatment produced the horrid smell of decomposing tissue mixed with strong cleaning agents that initially drew attention to the suitcases. Investigators then focused on Pamela's movements after she left the rehabilitation center. Street camera footage showed her walking toward a nearby public transportation stop where she appeared to be signaling passing vehicles. About 15 minutes later, a taxi pulled over. Pamela exchanged a few words with the driver before getting into the car. The trail went cold once the taxi left the range of the street cameras, but investigators were able to identify the vehicle's license plate. The driver was located soon after, and upon seeing Pamela's photo, he immediately recognized her. His account added a new dimension to the investigation. According to the driver, a young woman carrying a suitcase had approached him at the bus stop that evening, asking for a ride to the train station. She planned to travel to Rome, but the train had already left, so she intended to spend the night at the station waiting for the next one. The driver admitted that he offered to take her to his home instead, and to his surprise, she agreed without hesitation. He stated that they engaged in intimate relations, claiming it was entirely consensual. The following morning, Pamela reportedly felt unwell and asked to be dropped off at a small park rather than returning to the station. The driver suspected she was experiencing withdrawal symptoms. The park she requested was known locally as a hotspot for obtaining illegal substances. However, he decided it was not his concern and left her at the location she asked for. He claimed that was the last time he saw her. The driver's story and alibi were quickly verified. He had indeed dropped Pamela off at the park before resuming his work. While he was cleared of any involvement in the crime, Pamela's parents later tried to hold him responsible for what they considered an exploitative encounter, arguing that their daughter's condition made her incapable of giving informed consent. However, the court ruled in the driver's favor, acquitting him of all charges. In the park, Pamela came into contact with a man named Desmond Luggy, a Nigerian national involved in selling drugs. Thanks to police informants, he was quickly identified and arrested on suspicion of involvement in Pamela's death. During questioning, Desmond admitted to selling Pamela a dose of an illegal substance for which she had paid with a necklace. He insisted, however, that after the exchange, she left and that he had no part in her death. Although his account was confirmed, Desmond remained in custody due to outstanding drug charges. About 15 minutes after Pamela purchased the substance, security footage showed her entering a nearby pharmacy. She bought a single syringe and left shortly afterward. The footage also captured another man entering and exiting the pharmacy around the same time. He appeared to keep his distance, but seemed familiar with Pamela. He was later identified as Innocent Osegale, a 30-year-old undocumented immigrant involved in drug sales. Innocent quickly became a key suspect. Law enforcement obtained his address from Desmond, who had been offered a reduced sentence in exchange for his cooperation. Innocent Osegale lived in a troubled neighborhood just a few blocks from the park. During the search of this premises, officers discovered multiple bloodstains that appeared to have been poorly cleaned. They also found women's clothing matching the description of what Pamela had been wearing. Testing confirmed the blood belonged to Pamela. In the bathroom, investigators found additional bloodstains and 4 empty bottles of chlorine bleach, leaving no doubt that the crime had occurred there. Surveillance cameras captured Osaegale approaching the ditch where the suitcases were found. He was not alone. Footage showed him arriving in a car driven by another man, later identified as Lucky Awolima. Both Awolima and Desmond were arrested for helping transport the suitcases, though they claimed they thought they were just disposing of trash. Innocent Osaegale was arrested on February 2, 2018. He denied any wrongdoing, claiming Pamela had died of an overdose in his apartment after they had been intimate. He claimed he panicked and dismembered her body because he didn't think the police would believe his story. However, investigators soon uncovered a critical detail he had overlooked: the victim's hands. Forensic experts found traces of his skin cells under Pamela's nails, showing that she had fought back and scratched her attacker. While Osaegale remained in custody, toxicology reports showed that while Pamela had drugs in her system, the levels were not lethal. Further examination revealed 2 penetrating wounds on her right side, inflicted while she was still alive. Her liver had suffered severe damage, and it was clear she had died from significant blood loss. The dismemberment took place several hours after her death. Investigators placed an informant in Osaegale's cell to extract a confession. The strategy succeeded. Innocent admitted that when Pamela became unconscious from the drugs, he tried to exploit her. When she regained consciousness and began to resist, scratching him and threatening to call the police, he grabbed a knife and stabbed her in the liver. Assuming she was dead, he began to dismember her. Pamela unexpectedly regained consciousness again, screaming for help. Panicking, he stabbed her a second time, delivering the fatal wound. The informant recorded the confession, which became a crucial piece of evidence. The trial of innocent Osaegale, Desmond Lucky, and Lucky Awolima began in the spring of 2019. In May 2019, innocent Osaegale was convicted of murder, sexual assault, and desecration of a body. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His appeals were later denied. Desmond and Lucky Awolima were convicted of drug distribution and sentenced to 5 years each, as there was no direct evidence linking them to the violent act itself. The case sparked widespread outrage in Italy. In one particularly shocking incident, an Italian man named Luca Traini armed himself and began shooting at African passengers in a bus in Macerata as revenge for Pamela. 6 people were injured. Traini was arrested and sentenced to 12 years in prison. The story of Pamela Mastropietro is a heartbreaking reminder of the fragility of life and the catastrophic consequences of institutional failure. She was a young woman who needed protection and care, but instead she found herself in the hands of those who sought only to exploit her. We honor her memory by reflecting on the importance of mental health support and the protection of the vulnerable. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We post crime case videos every night. Until next time, stay sharp, stay vigilant.